Have you ever thought about playing a solo RPG as the game master? I know that when we play solo RPGs, we're switching between player and GM for most of the times, but we are expected to be playing as the protagonist, and we use oracles and tools as a game master emulator. But what if we did the opposite? What if we played as the game master and we had character emulators? That's what I intended to show you today. Hello everyone and welcome. My name is Cezar Capacle, and today I want to show you my tool, O, a player character emulator. So about a year and a half ago, I released O as a one-page experiment. I made it for the one-page TTRPG Jam, and much to my surprise, it was very well received. So I learned that it's not only me that wanted to try and play as the game master while playing solo. Of course, I'm not the first one to do that. You can find other kinds of character emulators, but I think people really vibed with the approach, the simplicity, the straightforwardness of this emulator. You might be thinking, why would I want to do that? Well, there are many reasons. I think the most obvious one is if you want to play published adventure modules. There are plenty of techniques you can find online to try and play as the character and use a published adventure module in a way that tries either to avoid spoilers or use spoilers as just inspiration, break apart the module and use it as a reference that then you put together in pretty much a different adventure, or even just try and ignore all the spoilers and make an effort to separate character knowledge and player knowledge and go with the flow even though you have pretty much read what happens for the entirety of the adventure module. Of course, you can try and avoid reading it ahead, but it's hard, especially when you have like puzzles and traps. It gets to a point that the separation is fuzzy and inefficient, and you might not enjoy the experience as much. Now, you can also use a player character emulator if you still want to play as the protagonist and you want to emulate hirelings, allies, or NPCs that are tagging along, and they want them to be independent and make their own unpredictable choices. You can also use it to playtest your own adventures or even your session prep against unpredictable character behavior. So let's say you have a dungeon delve prepared and you want to see how characters would behave inside of it. You can run it by yourself, outsourcing how characters would decide to interact with your adventure and perhaps learning a thing or two about it. Or you're just like me and you actually prefer the GM side of things and you have more fun playing as the GM. Me, I like the developing threads, the way we discover aspects of the world or color things about the world and portray NPCs and everything more than I like just playing as a character. So I sometimes, even when playing traditionally solo, I tend to lean more on the side of the GM. And I thought, why not give it a proper tool to do it? Now, I'm recording this video because I'm revisiting O and I'm re-releasing it in a zine format for Zinetopia. Zinetopia will run on February 2026, so if you're watching this right now, you have time to go to the link in the description and follow the project as it launches. If you're watching this in the future, perhaps the campaign is already running. If it's over, you can find it on my H page. All the links are in the description. So why a zine format now? Well, the mechanics stay the same. It's very straightforward, very simple, as I said. However, with a little more room, I can explain the concepts a bit more, especially because the idea of playing solo as the GM might feel a little alien for people. So I have space to add examples of play, to give step-by-step procedures that the one-page format would not be able to hold. Not only that, I can expand a bit on the tables that I offered. The original version has some spark tables for you to determine what your character motivation is, their drives, their actions, their behavior, their disposition. But with more space, I can expand this set of tables to include specific reactions in different scenarios. What would they do in a negotiation or an interaction or a combat situation? What clarifying questions would they ask? So there is no bloat, no overthinking what is already working. It's just really more room to breathe, explain, and expand with meaningful tables and resources. One of the things I'm excited about is that using O as your resolution mechanic. So if you want to just try out the vibes and the world building and the story of an adventure, and you don't want to be bogged down by the minutiae of rules, specific mechanics, you can use Triple O as an ad hoc, very simple, straightforward conflict resolution mechanic, and you wouldn't need any other system. And that's what I'm going to do today. Now, the original one-page version remains 100% compatible. In fact, if you back the zine the first 48 hours, I'll send you a physical copy as a brochure of the original one-page version that you can use as a quick reference on the table. Pretty cool, right? So what's the plan today? Well, I'm going to show you how to use Triple O in the way that I think most people will use it. That is, to run a published adventure module. I want to highlight how flexible, versatile, and straightforward the tool is. And I'll go step by step from the setup to the character creation and to actually running the thing. So if you've never played solo RPGs as the GM, you have an idea of what this is all about. And you can see how Triple O supports you but gets out of the way so you can enjoy the thing. You shouldn't feel like work, right? You're having fun playing as the game master. So first thing you need, obviously, is an adventure. Can I play without one? Like some solo RPGs that are just about rolling in random tables and creating the mission and the story and the things as you go? Absolutely. You do it the same way. You create a character, you create a mission, but when time comes to play the thing, you take the role of the GM for you and you emulate the character going through it. No problem at all. But for the sake of this exercise, I'll use a published adventure. I found one. It's a one-page adventure. This, by the way, if you're asking yourself, this is a Canva whiteboard that I put everything on. Makes my life easier. I have here my adventure called Ernie Wyver's Museum of Oddities by Simone Santini. It's a one-page dungeon. It was actually part of the one-page dungeon contest compendium of 2021. I'll put a link in the description if you want to buy it. A lot of cool stuff there. I found this one, which I think it would be a challenge to play as a character because there are a lot of traps. There are a lot of secret treasures that if you just read as much as one paragraph ahead, you might spoil things. So I think it would be more fun to enjoy it as the GM. And also it's smaller, so it won't take forever. I don't think we will play it the whole adventure on a video. It might take a while, especially because I'll be explaining the mechanics as I go. But it gives you a good framework of the thing. What else I have here? I have the one-page version of Triple O here. The zine version is already written, but is not laid out yet. So I'm using the summary version, but I will be introducing new elements and new ways of thinking that will be included on the zine format as well as a preview for you. So I have all the descriptions of the rooms here, and I also isolated the map bigger here that we'll be navigating. So this is step one done. I have my adventure. Let's assume I've read through it. You don't need to really because you're playing by yourself, but sometimes it's fun to make sure this is the kind of adventure you want to run before you quote unquote waste your time actually playing it. So I looked through it, seems fun, a lot of interesting challenges. So I went ahead and chose this one. Now, next thing you want to do, create your characters. But for what system? Any system. Triple O is system agnostic. Any system that you want to try, you can. Although, however, I have to remind you, you are playing as the game master. So choose a rule set that you are familiar with or you wanted to try out. But remember that your focus here is on the GMing side. Can I use pre-made characters? Of course, I recommend you do, or random generated characters as well. I'll tell you what, for our exercise here, I even went ahead and created characters for 3 different systems because we won't be using the mechanics. And I want to show how flexible and straight to the point Triple O can be. What I did was I created one character here using a Cairn character generator. I'll link it in the description. I've created a second character here using a Trophy Gold character generator online. And my third character, I used a D&D 5e character generator. And they will work together. That's pretty cool, right? Now, for your party size, I'd recommend 2 or 3 to start. The first time you run an adventure with Triple O, I think you're still getting the hang of it. You are getting used on how many times you actually use the mechanics of Triple O to outsource decision. And we tend to overdo it in the beginning. And if you have a party of like 5 people and you're rolling to decide what they do for each one of them, it can get tiring. After you're used to it and you know when to engage the mechanics or not, you can have a bigger party, especially if you want to emulate, for example, the party that you GM for. But I would go with 2 and 3. I wouldn't recommend just having a single character either, because part of the unpredictability of character behavior is in fact the party dynamics, like coming to a decision or having different personalities of different characters causing trouble or coming up with solutions. So having a varied party with different types of characters with different characteristics and traits makes for a richer experience. Right, so I created these characters with online generators, but what is important for me in these characters? As you create it normally. There is no different mechanic for you to create characters. Any level you want, any system you want, any characteristics you want. But when you evaluate the character now, you have to pay attention of things about this character that would inform their behavior or their decision making. This is what we call in OOO their traits. You can find those things on their background, on their class, if they have quirks, personality traits, even on their skills. All of these bits of information will influence how this character acts, right? They will probably rely more on the things they're good at. If they have a trauma or a past or a backstory, this will probably inform it as well. If they have a deep motivation or if they're searching a goal, this also informs their decisions. Now we're going to go through the character and look for clues about how they will behave, and these clues will become our traits. Now on the zine version of OOO, I'll offer a trait sheet that you can go ahead and write down the things that you find. It can be just a single word, or you can develop a snippet of text. It can be things like always ready to fight, or noble attitude, or cautious to a fault. Those are snippets that form traits that, again, will inform how they act. Let's see. So we have here Winning Loomer, formerly an alchemist, so this is important. You have a scrawny physique. Okay, scrawny physique, perhaps this will inform how they act. Speak in a cryptic manner. Okay, this is behavioral. And wear rancid clothing. Oh my god, you're craven. Craven is cowardly, right? If I'm not mistaken. Yet cautious. Okay, these two things are kind of similar. So this is very behavior-like information, and are generally regarded as respected. We have the misfortune of being abandoned. Okay, so this is this trauma. So perhaps if comes a decision to be alone, to split the party, this person won't like it. Now, none of these things are actually too much information for me. Perhaps they're her high will and higher strength. Those are my traits then. When I make decisions for her, those traits will inform us. Now, second character. Your Kel, once a traitorous, how do you pronounce this? Traitorous cupbearer. So those two things are traits. There's behavior here. In cupbearer, there's a background, perhaps courtly manners or being able to be quiet. Now, blacksmith. Okay, this is a skill. There's a desire. This is important. Find the artifact that proves the king's true nature. So there's a motivation for this person here. This is very helpful to inform decisions. Okay, skills. Endurance, this is important. So, okay, this is good. Metal, perhaps not so much, but weapons. I have a small but vicious dog that I made sure to include here. Of course, it's an angry chihuahua called Cuddles. Surprisingly, the D&D character gave us a lot of things to work with. Especially, I think this is the 2014 version that still had, I think, my favorite part of character creation in D&D, which was trait, ideal, bond, and flaw. This is Erdith, wizard, high elf, charlatan, pocket anything that has value. That is juicy. Always in debt, decadent luxuries. Talk my way out, so high charisma, or likes to parlay more than fighting. Okay, lots of traits here, and I didn't even get to the other parts. They have an idea of charity, so they pocket everything, but they want to distribute the money. So you see, I didn't touch any numbers at all, but I have a lot of juice here to inform my characters here. So if you wanted, you could grab a piece of paper and write them down, separate characteristics by types of traits like personality, behavior, skills, and everything. Or you can just highlight, as I did, on your character sheet from your system, or use the trait sheet that will accompany the Triple zine. And this is all we have to do about our characters. Now, if the system you're using does not give you enough juice about your character in terms of behavior and decision making, so it's just a bunch of numbers that like you're good at photograph or you're good at horse riding, and you see, well, how does that help me make a decision about this character? You might want to use the tables that come with Triple O to add a layer of depth to your character to help you inform how they behave. So, for example, Win in here, I think they're lacking a drive, like something they're working for. So I can use my Spark tables on Triple O. As you can see, it comes with a D66 table that you can roll one or more times, even combine if you want, and then you can add it to your character. So let's roll. Want to know how I'm rolling dice inside Canva? This is a YouTube video with a die rolling on screen that you pause and get a random number. Pretty cool, right? Let's try and use it. Let's see. It's rolling 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1. Give us justice. Okay, so she's motivated by justice. So seeing that she was abandoned, perhaps justice is that she wants to make sure that people that abandon children are held responsible for their acts, so nobody has to suffer what she did. Is there something more immediate that she wants to do in these terms? Well, what you can do is use the action verbs here. You have action and focus. You roll dice and you combine them. Let's see what we get. 6 and 3, and the other one, 1 and 5. 6 and 3 is retreat, 1 and 5 is chance, retreat of chance. So I think in order to tie in with the plot of our adventure that I'll share in a bit, her focus now is on a chance that they have to bring someone to justice. But this retreat is, instead of going straight to the accusation, she first is retreating to this adventuring site to claim perhaps an important artifact or a piece of information that will help her in her cause. So that brings our motivation for this particular adventure. So let's just add this here as a sticky note. Justice, find info or two to accuse someone. So you don't have to do this, but it makes it easier for you to make decisions for a character when you have it clear in your mind what their desires, motivations, and goals are. And that's it. We are ready to start the adventure. So let's do it. How do we play it as the GM? Well, you have to remember that you are on the GM seat. So you can read ahead, you can read the spoilers, and you can read the boxed text aloud. One of the benefits of playing as the GM is perhaps that you can practice your GM chops and give it vivid descriptions, or practice how you portray the NPCs and the answers they would give. I'm going to start by reading this pitch of the adventure. Don't worry, I won't read the whole thing, otherwise it will be a little boring. But just to give us a mentality of how we go into it. Ernie Wyver, in his golden days, was a historian and adventurer. He ventured alone across any faraway land and came back with ancient artifacts and stories to tell. As he grew too old for the adventure life, he retired and opened a museum full of all the stuff he retrieved in his voyages. So this is the adventure site, his museum, a cursed place. As the years went by, museum was always empty. No one came to see his exposition. Oh, too bad. And the old man became resentful. All right. On his deathbed, he cursed the museum so that any adventurer who would come in to steal his artifacts and died in the process would become a memoryless ghost. Okay, so this is a haunted place, right? Walk the museum, blah, blah. Wyver is a ghost himself, haunting the place as a phantom guide. Okay, so he's walking around. Wyver has littered the museum with traps. This is important for us. And thus anything he can to lead the PCs to an untimely death. So see, now we know as the game master that this is his true intent. And it's okay because we're not playing as characters. The characters don't know that. While pretending to guide them through the exhibits. So this NPC is lying. Dealing with an NPC that is lying as a character is hard. Now as a GM, it's okay. If Ernie Wyver is defeated, the place immediately rots in disrepair and the souls of the trapped adventurers are free. So perhaps the hook to get the characters into this museum is not, oh, go there and defeat the ghost, because they don't know that the ghost is an enemy. Actually, the rumor was there is this ghost that's very alone and craving for attention, and will guide you through all this museum, and you can perhaps find treasure and everything. So for our characters, now we have the wizard elf, pocket anything I see that may have some value. So her motivation is clear. The blacksmith, find the artifact that proves the king's true nature. Perhaps a rumor said that this artifact could be here, right? The lady here, find info or two to accuse someone. There is probably an item here that she's looking for. Or even if she can't find anything, she can find something of value because this person that she's trying to accuse is in a place of power and she would need like the support of very expensive lawyers or anything. Or even maneuver her way into the nobility to kind of confront this person. It might be her grandparent. I don't know. So they all want to go inside and find objects. So they are into loot, which is perfect for a museum of oddities. And we can start at the room number 1, the ticket office. Ernie Wyver's Ghosts welcomes any adventurer who comes in, offering himself as a guide, and will pretend not to notice anytime someone steals something. Okay, so see, this is pretending, this is lying. Again, information that the characters can have. If they find out his true intentions, he disappears, reappearing only if they try to leave the museum. Okay, and he desperately attacks in a last attempt to kill them. Wyver is a powerful ghost and can summon animated objects to fight on his side. If the PCs are openly hostile from the start, he can lock the doors of the museum and then trap them inside. See, again, how would you choose the behavior of your character if you have this information, right? Okay, so let's put our characters in this first place. I was having so much fun with this. I created miniatures with the tokens here. I used a disk element and put their names and everything so we can explore the place with our characters. And even Cuddles is here. Look at him. Look at this beautiful boy. So we have Kel, Erdith, and Wayne descending the stairs as they come here. Now, you're the GM, right? You describe the scenery, you describe what they can see. There's a sign here. There's perhaps the guide to the museum, the places that they want to go. And the adventurer says that the ghost of Ernie shows up. Let me put a ghost here. Look at that. Look how fun it is. It's not even a tutorial anymore. I'm just playing and having fun. Perhaps if you want, you practice the voice of the ghost, or Ernie's personality as he offers to be a guide. Okay, so this is the first decision you have to make. How would the characters react? Now, O, first and most important principle is that characters will do what is obvious for them unless there is a reason for them to do something different. Why? Because if you require a die roll or any mechanic to decide what each character will do in every single circumstance, your story won't move. It will take too long. So if the stakes are low, or if you don't see an obvious reason for them to act in a different way, just go with what's obvious, right? So Winning, she is kind of cowardly, so I would assume she would stay behind. Cuddles is vicious, so he's probably barking like crazy here, and Kel is trying to control the dog. Erdith is looking around and seeing if this very room has something of value that she might pocket. So she would probably ask you as the GM, do I see anything of value here? And then you answer. Well, there is nothing on the adventure itself that shows that there is. As the GM, you want to decide that there is, or roll on an oracle and see, well, okay, for the sake of testing the mechanics, let's say that we're not sure how Kel would react to the ghost's offer to be their guide throughout the museum. Right. So you go back to his traits to get any clues on his behavior. So he has betrayal as a skill. Perhaps he's not very easy to trust on people. He's naturally suspicious. So this is the obvious thing. So you could go ahead and just say, okay, he's acting with suspicion because that's his nature. Now, if you're not sure, then you can engage with the triple O mechanics. Let me show you how it works. When determining how a character would act in a given situation, you define their triple O. That's where the name comes from. The obvious, the option, and the odd. The obvious, it's the most predictable course of action. So we already know this. He would be suspicious, right? The option, what's an alternative action they could take that, while less predictable, still kind of makes sense? Well, he wants to find the artifact. He would think, okay, this ghost is kind of sus, but I really want to tag along because following him is my best shot at finding the thing. Because I saw that this ghost is very willing to share all the facts about the objects here. So this is an option. It's not the most obvious, but it is also plausible. And the odd is what is an unexpected or atypical behavior they might exhibit, something they rarely do. So here you have some leeway. It can be something completely out of the left field that they never do, or something that it is still somewhat makes sense in the circumstance, but it's very rare they would. If you don't have any ideas for this one, you can use tables as well. There is, for example, disposition. That makes sense for us right now. Let's roll on disposition and see what we get. I rolled a 35 and I got friendly. Okay, this is odd. Would never expected this from Kel, but perhaps considering his cupbearer past, his courtly manners kick in and he's acting friendly towards the ghost. With that, we have here the triple O. The obvious, suspicious, the option, eager to tag along, and the odd, friendly. Now, we roll 1d6 and do the triple O check. What do? If you roll a 4 to 6, they do the obvious thing. 2 to 3 is the option, and if you roll a 1, is the odd. You see that you have 50% of chance of doing the obvious, and then 33% of doing the second thing, and just like 16-17% of doing the completely strange thing. You also have a chance to double down. If you feel that the character is more inclined to act in a certain way, you roll 2 to 6 and you pick your favorite result. Let's see that for some reason, in this circumstance, although we said that the obvious thing for him to do is to be suspicious, given the particular circumstances of this scenario, I think there is more of a chance of him to be eager to tag along and find the artifact. You see what I did here? There's this expected behavior in general, but in this circumstance, there is another one. What you can do here, you roll to the 6 and then you pick your favorite. Let's say I roll a 1 and a 3. So 1 would be the odd and 3 is the option. I would, in this case, choose the 3 because it maps to the behavior that I actually expected him to have. Now, this is a cool thing. If you roll doubles, that behavior becomes more prevalent for that character. Make a note of this along with their traits. This is cool. Let's say, for example, I roll here and I roll 2 1s, 1 and 1. So not only is he friendly, but this behavior of being friendly to ghosts is something that is now more prevalent in this character. So next time they face a ghost in this museum, perhaps being friendly to a ghost will not be as strange, perhaps will be even the obvious thing to do, or perhaps it becomes a new trait. So this allows you to be flexible with your characters and actually discover how they act as you play. This is a simple and clever way to emulate the unpredictability of a character behavior throughout an adventure, right? They're not monodimensional, predictable. They can evolve, they can change, they can surprise you. And that's what makes playing as a GM fun, when you allow yourself to be surprised by the character's actions. Right, let's do this roll and see how it goes. Let's double down. I think it's more, it will be more likely for him to actually do the option, that is to be eager to tag along, but we'll see. Okay, let's roll. We got a 5, that is the obvious, and a 4, which is also the obvious. So he's suspicious. He probably says to the other characters, I don't know, guys. Cuddles has a sixth sense here. His instinct never fails. If he's barking, it's because this guy is not to be trusted. And Erdet maybe says, well, Cuddles barks to everyone, not just for this ghost. We should go along. And Wynn is just scared, and she doesn't want to make a decision, and they're stuck here. Now, this is good, because this allows us to show another mechanic of OOO, which is group decisions. Let me just clarify that I'm overusing the system here just to show it how it works. Normally, I would never make like 2 questions for the system in a single line of dialogue between NPC and characters. But since I'm trying to highlight how to operate the mechanics, I'm overusing it a bit, okay? The procedure that I showed you, it's very fast. In fact, you don't even need to define all the 3 alternatives before you roll. You can try and roll the OOO check. You make up the course of action later after you get to the result. It took us a while to explain because it's the first time I'm going step by step. But once you memorize this 4 to 6 obvious, 2 to 3 option, and 1 is the odd, you barely need to see the paper again. This procedure is used for individual actions, but you can use something similar for group actions. Things like, what path will they take? What are their plans? Or do they accept the proposition? Oh, look at this example. This is exactly what's going on here. The ghost is proposing to follow them along, actually to act as a guide. Are they going to accept it? Well, naturally, if the group agrees, based on their traits and their behavior, what would they do? But if you anticipate some inter-party conflict, you can use the mechanics here to simulate this conflict, which is something very natural that happens on tables. I think 65% of the time I spend playing with my home group is them deciding what to do next. So that's fair. Let's select 3 courses of action here. They either, well, accept the proposition, they refuse, and they say that they want to go alone, and the third one, you can use the tables here to come up with, or again, inspect the traits of the character or come up with something else. Let's say that the third option here would be that they accept, but they ask a guarantee in return, like, let us hold 1 artifact in our hands so that we know that what you're saying is true. Excellent. You have 3 courses of action, 3 potential courses of action. How do you decide which one the characters will take? Well, you guessed it. You roll a OOO check. You assign 1 of the courses of action as the obvious path, 1 as an option, and 1 as the odd. You roll the OOO check, and you have your answer. Easy as that. But you might be thinking, how do I choose which goes on which? Which course of action is the obvious? Which one is the option, or which one is the odd? Now, you have a few ways to do this. For example, if a character has a trait that indicates they're the leader or they're more persuasive, you can go with their proposed course of action as the obvious one. They have more leverage on this situation. If someone is either shy or is known to be reckless or selfish, or simply their idea sounds too absurd, you can give them the odd. This shouldn't take long. This is a gut call. Go ahead, assign those possibilities to the 3, roll your die, and off you go. However, sometimes, as in real life with real players, there is no one distinct way to go. And of all the possibilities presented, none can be defined as the obvious, the option, or the odd. What you do then? Well, you can roll a die for each one. The higher is the obvious, the middle one is the option, and the lowest is the odd. Easy as that. For our case, again, I'm taking more time here just for the sake of explaining. When you play, you do this super fast. Now, we know that Erdeth, she often talk her way out of trouble, right? So this seems like a person that has higher charisma and kind of gets the things her way. So she proposed that they should trust the ghost. So you could say that her idea is actually the obvious. Kel has this desire to find the artifact, but is suspicious of the guy. And Waynon is cautious, and she proposed for him to give an assurance. Between those two, I don't know which one would be the odd, which one would be the option, which is more likely. So I can roll a die. Let's see. Kel's proposition gets a 1, and Waynon's proposition gets a 2. Okay, so hers is higher. So her proposition of asking the ghost for some assurance will be the option. Kel's proposition of going by themselves alone without a guide will actually be the odd. So now what's happening here is in-game, these three characters are talking amongst themselves and deciding, no, we should do that, we should do that, we should do that. And you actually go ahead and roll. And boom, 1, the odd. They want to go alone. So there you go. This is how you get surprised by your characters, right? They talk amongst themselves, and finally Kel is very persuasive, and I think Cuddles never stops barking, and they say, okay, they turn to the ghost and say, well, we appreciate your guidance, but as you can see, our pet here is very uncomfortable with your presence, and we would rather go alone, and if we find ourselves in trouble, we'll call your name and you ask for your help. Now, this is the time that if you're playing with your system of choice, depending on the system, that would require probably either a roll, or you as the GM would consider how likely it is that the ghost will accept these terms. Is this a persuasion check, or a charisma check, intimidation, or willpower, or there is no check at all? Does it escalate to a confrontation? Now you're the GM, remember, those decisions of the characters were emulated by the system. You are deciding, you as the GM, what would be fun right now to happen. I would probably say that for my characters here, I would say that the ghost hesitates a bit, but then vanishes and let them wander around. And I would use this reappearance of the ghost at moments of trouble as an interesting plot hook, a plot development for the story. You could say, okay, this is a good argument. You can see that the ghost is annoyed by the barking of the dog, so roll me a persuasion check and you have advantage, assuming you're playing a system that has that. And then probably the person with higher charisma, Erdeth, will come to the front, use her charisma and roll with advantage, and we go from there. If she fails, what happens then? This is a good practice as well for GMs. You should ask for a roll if you have interesting choices that happen with success and failure. If they fail, what happens? Do they fight? Do they confront the big boss right now? Or does he actually disappears, but you can see like windows and doors locking around, and they realize in this very moment that they're trapped? Up to you. Now you're playing as the GM and you go from there. As I told you, I decided to play this game without a system and instead use O as my conflict resolution mechanic. This is something new that I'm bringing to the zine version. As I said, I would probably let them go, but since I'm demoing the system, I want to take this opportunity and say, let's suppose that me as a GM decide that, okay, if you want to do this, you have to persuade the ghost. That requires a roll. I don't have stats. I don't have mechanics. I have characters with 3 different systems. How the heck do you do that? Well, you do exactly the same way as you did the O check. But instead of deciding what is the obvious action that they will take, you decide what is the obvious outcome of their action. What do I mean by that? Erdeth is going to propose that the ghost leaves them alone. She will do a persuasion check. Now, She has high charisma. She always gets out of trouble. So I think the obvious thing here is that she gets what she wants. The ghost goes away. Now the option here is something that is likely but a bit different. So this could be like a partial success. He could say, okay, but I'll go with you for the first room, and if I see that you can find your way by yourselves, then I'll disappear. The unlikely outcome, the odd here, is for him to refuse completely and say, no, if you want to explore this, you have to come with me, and that's the only option. So you can see, using the same framework here, we're using it as our mechanics, our system, and we don't need numbers. Based on their traits and the circumstances, we come up with 3 possible outcomes for this action, and we roll and decide. Again, you have the same spread of results, and you can even double down. If there is one result that you think is more likely, you can roll twice and pick the most likely result. Let's roll and see what happens. Rolling, and it's a 3. Oh, so this is okay, I might let you go, but just after the first room. Let me just show you part of my collection, and if you behave well, I'll let you explore everything by yourselves. How's that? Players talk amongst themselves and say, okay, all right, let's do it. I think that what happens next is we have 2 paths to follow. Path for the number 2 and the number 5. So I think the ghost will present that. Let's see what we have here. Would you like to go to the Witherheads exhibit or to the Hall of Athos and Lake Dawn? This is time for a group decision. Which one do you look forward to more? You can use a triple O check, or based on their traits, think what's the most obvious path to follow. Now, I'd like to show you another thing that is coming for the Zine version. If you know players, at this moment, they would like to make an informed decision, because for now, you just have 2 names and 2 directions, left and right. Your players will probably ask the ghost, what can we find there? Or would ask you, the GM, if they can see something, or they would explore more the surroundings so that they can make an informed decision. And although Triple O is not a player emulator, it's a character emulator, I'm exploring the Zine version. The idea of having a table of potential questions that, in a way, are actually character questions. You're actually clarifying through the player what your character is seeing or perceiving in a way. So this requires curation still. This is an early draft that I'm working with, but there are tables that things that they could ask for you and that will help you bring the space to life, and then in turn would have the characters to make their decisions. So they could ask something like, what's the lightning like up ahead? You'd say, oh, there's something that is shiny on the corridor to the left, and to the right it's longer and it's kind of darker in this way. There is also spatial and navigation situations. Is there a way around? Can I see anything from there? What's behind us? How far away is that? What is it made of? So these are common questions that players ask that are actually what the characters are experiencing, and you can do that. So this is another table that will come to the Zine version that can help you emulate character behavior and give you a more authentic GM experience. We decided that the ghost likes to explain everything, so he'll probably say there are orc heads in this way, and the other one, oh, it's a room dedicated to the major polis of the past, so cities of the past, 2 giant warrior statues and everything. This is that way. So he proposes these 2 things. And considering that all the members of the party are looking for specific relics and objects, it feels that they would be more tempted to investigate number 5, right? So I don't think I need to roll a triple O check based on their traits, their drives. That's why I said that establishing drives and goals for their characters help you out. Because when it comes bifurcations like this, the split path, with a bit of description, you already have information enough to make a call. So they say, okay, take us to the Hall of Athos and Lake Dawn. And off we go. I was dying to show you guys this. Check this out. The ghost flies around, all right, and the party follows. I won't do this with everyone, but I do this one. Canva whiteboard, guys. This is a VTT in disguise. Here we are. Let me flip these people. So, number 5, you read ahead, room dedicated to giant, blah, blah, blah. You see if there is information that the characters would know just by looking at it. Depending on the system, you just give all the information or you ask for perception checks if that's the case. But most importantly, you learn if there are traps, if there are things that the players would consider doing. So let's see. The ghost says, this is a room dedicated to the 2 major police of the past. 2 giant warrior statues stand at the entrance. There is a numismatic exposition. This is coins and bills, right? And a massive face-shaped rock at the end of the room, the mouth of Lake Dawn. This is a humanoid creature, may put its arm inside the mouth-shaped hole at the center of the stone. Okay. If the creature swears an oath that aligns with the philosophy of Lake Dawn, personal worth, courage, hate of cowards, he or she will be rewarded with the Bracer of Lake Dawn, a magical bracer that turns into a shield on command. If the creature pronounces a silly oath or tries to trick the mouth, its arm will be cut right off. Oh my god! And there is a treasure here, rare drachmas times 3, 9 gold pieces each. Now, this is excellent. Why? This depends on your GM style. Would you say that the ghost says, would you like to swear an oath here? Or this is something that you leave for the players to discover and find out? Now, if you do leave for the players, how would you know that this character would even try to do something like that? Well, this is my favorite use of OOO. Let me show you. You use OOO for questions. It's the same method. Obvious, option, and odd. But instead of deciding what action they perform, you decide if they perform a certain action. For example, do they open the door? Do they search for traps? Did they think to bring a fishing net? And most importantly, and pay attention to this, would they consider, this is the most important question when you're playing solo as the GM. Because you can never assume that a character would try to do something just based on the description read about the room. Okay, there's a hole in the wall. Would they consider putting their arms into it? Would they consider place the gem in the statue's eye? This is an example I wrote here. Would they consider offering meat to the griffin? So these are to solve puzzles, to avoid traps, would they consider thinking or performing a certain action that would grant them a boon or a bane? For example, would they consider placing the gem in the statue's eye? The obvious views, depending on their traits, of course, it would be they immediately try the gem. The option would be they first cast a protective spell. And the odd would be they completely ignore the gem. And then you make your OOO check. So, let's go back to our situation here. Let's say Ernie's ghost starts telling stories about the statues and the myths that go around it, but he never mentions exactly that they have to put their arms in their mouth. In fact, we could say that since they asked to be left alone and Ernie is kind of, in fact, trying to get them all killed, he would say, well, you asked to be alone, I'll leave you alone. And he whoosh, disappears. Boom. And they're alone. What do? My question is, would they consider placing their arm here? Well, I would perhaps give some hints. There are some inscriptions, or perhaps there's a bit of a fabric in the mouth. Winnie, definitely not. Her trait is she's cowardly, so nope. She's looking around and seeing perhaps she wants to find something of value. She's inspecting this word here. Erdeth is braver, so perhaps she would. Cuddles is sniffing around here, and perhaps Cuddles is the one that calls the attention to even the smell of blood in the mouth, that somebody gets their hand chopped. And Kel, a blacksmith, he checks it, and then we can run a OOO check for Kel in this case. Let's say, would Kel consider putting his arm in the mouth and swearing an oath? So I think the obvious here would be that he would first try his tools in the mechanism to see how it works. The option would be to ask for Erdith if she can identify magic and perhaps translate the runes around here. And the odd would be just to jam his arm into it and just see what happens. Based on his traits and the circumstances, this is what I think they would do. Now we roll and decide. Let's see. Rolling, boom, 4, the obvious. He would try his blacksmith tools and see how the thing reacts. At this moment, you could ask for a roll, like a crafting roll or something like that. Or you could do a luck roll if you're playing like an OSR game, or by GM Fiat decide how it reacts or if it does nothing at all. You could say, if you want like to call the attention for the runes, you say, well, it does not move, but perhaps the runes around it glow a little bit. So this would indicate that it's better to pay attention to what's written. And then you would go for Erdith, and she would probably try and translate the runes. If you're not sure, would they consider doing... You can ask a 000 check and decide if that's something they would consider. And then you run your checks, or in our case, we could use 000 as a check. We also have treasure hidden here. There's drachmas somewhere. It's not shown, it's not described on the adventure itself where it is, but they would search the room afterwards. Or would they? Again, this is a question. Would they consider searching for a hidden treasure? Well, considering that the 3 are here looking for artifacts, I would say that it is obvious. And I would just call it, okay, they will search for treasure. Or if you're not sure, you make a 000 check. So the obvious would be that they would check. The option would be that they would check, but only in a certain area, let's say near the sword. And the odd would be that they just ignore, they wouldn't search for treasures at all and just move along to the next place. Now, just for the sake of our demo here, let's say that they moved around and ended up in this room number 4 here. And why? Well, I'll tell you. Skeletons of prehistoric creatures are displayed in this room, next to old stone daggers and animal pelts. The skeletons will spring to life and attack a couple of minutes after the PCs enter the room. So that's why I chose it. We saw traps, we saw puzzles. How do you deal with combat? I think the most important thing to remember is that you are controlling the enemies. You decide on their behalf which kinds of attacks they do and everything. You're not controlling the characters, so what kind of attacks they do or what kind of tactical or strategical decisions they make, it's supposed to be a surprise for you, right? That doesn't mean that every time they perform an action, you have to roll a 000 check. Go with the obvious, because let's be honest, that's also what most players do. However, if there are clever solutions to a combat situation or different things that they could consider trying, but you don't know if the characters will try, you can have a 000 check to determine what they do. I placed here some funny little skeletons attacking them, and then you would engage with your mechanics of your combat system. As usual, initiative or not, rolling, positioning or not, theater of the mind. We don't have grids here, we don't have movement, but when time comes for a character to act, you decide what they do based on their traits, and if you're not sure, or if you want to inject some unpredictability, you roll a 000 check. So let's say it's Kel's turn. He is a blacksmith. He's got Cuddles here. In his traits, his weapon is listed as the dog. So the obvious thing here would be like to command Cuddles to attack. That would be something. You could just go ahead and say that, especially because there's a lot of bones and dogs quite like that. Okay, that's the thing that he does. Cuddles comes here and tries to grab the leg of the skeleton, and then you engage with your mechanics or use 000 as your RPG system as well, and decide how this attack goes. If you're not sure, then you go a 000 check. Right, what is the obvious thing? Okay, obvious thing, tell Cuddles to attack. What would be an option here? Well, he's probably got a hammer as well, so he would try to smack the hammer on the head of the skeleton. What is an odd thing that they would do here? I don't know, run away or try and grab this Tyrannosaurus Rex? If you don't know, there are tables that can help you too in OOO. On the one-page version, you would use this action and focus, either just one of them or the two of them combined, and interpret freely. For the zine version, I'll have a dedicated combat action table that you can use to inspire your OOO check as well. This still requires some curation, but there will be actions like lay suppressing fire, shove, trip, or knock back, or taunt, intimidate, break line of sight, yell a warning or call for help. There will be actions like that that you can use that are specific to a combat scenario. In our case here, you can, for example, roll only focus and then you decide what the character is focusing on in this very moment. So let's say I roll and I get speed. So one of the options would be that he would try and close the distance as fast as they can to try and trip the skeleton and break them apart. So it was like a bash, a fast action. Or you can roll on the action table and let's say roll 21 and you get climb. Okay, so the odd option here would be that Cal would climb the Tyrannosaurus Rex to the top and from a vantage position start throwing things. This is unexpected, but would color the scene a bit more. And this is something that players could have considered if you were GMing for other people. So let's go with that. We have then the obvious is to command Cuddles to attack. The option is to use the axe on the head. And the odd would be to climb the dinosaur. Let's roll. Rolling and boom, 3. So it's the option. He was going to attack with his hammer. All right, then you go ahead and boom, use your system to resolve, make an attack roll, damage roll, whatever you want. In our case, we can use the OOO check to resolve it as well. What are the possible outcomes? The obvious thing, I think, is to smash the skeleton. A partial result, the option would be that you can hit, but the skeleton grabs you. And the odd thing would be to completely miss and fall prone and the skeleton is over you. Now, you would roll and see what happens next. And if you're using this and you don't have numbers like hit points or anything, how do you measure those things? Well, this is something else that is coming to the zine version, which is using temporary circumstances as traits. So let's say Cal gets hurt here. Now, being hurt is a temporary trait, meaning that his next actions will be informed by this condition. Being knocked prone is also a temporary condition that influences how you act. Even the environment is a temporary condition. So not only your fixed traits that you determined during character creation and then perhaps evolve as you play are necessary for you to define what they do, but also how their resources dwindle, how their health conditions stress, how the situation around them changes. All of these circumstances will be potential traits that you have to evaluate for their next actions. Let's say Cal gets hurt and falls. When you're doing his next action and deciding on the possible courses of action, you might say, well, one of the possibilities here now might be that he tries to hide and use some bandages instead of attacking. It is a trait. You have to let the current situation, the context you're in, influence their potential decisions and behaviors, right? You can even use OOO to define the fate of these characters depending on how badly they are doing. Again, you don't have hit points, but perhaps they're badly hurt and you can roll a OOO checks and figure out if the obvious thing is they survive, but the odd thing would be that they perish. If you're playing an adventure to enjoy the flow of the narrative, the story bits, the interaction between the NPCs and the scenarios, and you're not very interested in testing out particular mechanics, you can just do it with the narrative and use OOO to cover all your bases. As the combat evolves, you might go for group decisions as well. Will they retreat? Will they try and make prisoners? Will they try to interrogate them? Well, those are skeletons, but you get what I mean. Will they loot the bodies? Will they check for traps before they do? Will they try and dismantle the things? And then, again, you go for the obvious, or you roll a triple check, and off you go. So I'm having a lot of fun playing this way. Actually, this adventure is super fun. I might as well finish playing by myself after I turn off the camera. But I think for the purpose of the demoing what Triple is capable of doing, that should be enough for now. I hope I was able to show you how straightforward it is. Of course, I use it more than normal just for the demoing purposes. Ideally, it sits on the background and then just spring in to shake things up a bit. And I hope you're interested enough to check out the campaign page. There will be a lot of cool add-ons. I'm cross-collabing with another project that is super cool. And I'm really looking forward to put this zine in your hands and see what you can make of it. Since I've published the one-page version, I've received a lot of good feedback. People say that's the tool that was missing in their toolkit. They're allowing them to play as the GM without getting in the way. So if any of this sounds interesting to you, I would like you to check the link on the description. That will take you to BackerKit. You can follow the project and perhaps back in the first 48 hours to get this sweet brochure for free. Thank you very much, and I see you next time.